Hey Ryan, how's it going?
Good, Rick. How are you?
Well, last time I talked to you, you had just gotten off a boat. Or no, wait, you swam across. Remind me, you swam across the bay and then took a boat because the tide shifted you, right?
Yeah, well, yeah. So I do Alcatraz crossings with my swim club. I've done it 16 times now. I actually just did one 2 weeks ago. So they take you out on a boat and then you jump in and then
Yeah.
swim back on the tide and usually from Alcatraz and then to uh, what is the aquatic park in San Francisco. But when the tides are really strong, you end up swimming into Crissy Field. So you have to hop back on the boat and swim back. So yes, that is what I was doing about an hour before we chatted last time.
No, no, you look fresh today. So no
No,
swims
no,
this
no
morning.
swimming this morning. I thought about it, but I didn't do it. I didn't do it.
I love it. Well, thanks for joining. Why don't you give the audience a
Yeah,
little background of who you are and where you work?
yeah, yeah. I'm Ryan Patel-Francis. I work at a cybersecurity company called Abnormal. From a background perspective, I I majored in international politics and history. I thought I was going to be a diplomat or a historian, and then I decided I'd rather make money. Uh, I ended up in tech marketing because I moved to San Francisco in 2009, 2010, something like that, and I was looking for a job. I'd planned events in the past, and I actually was a paralegal for a little while in New York City. And during that time, I used a product called iManage. So when I went to my first interview, um, my boss, my soon-to-be boss, was like, "Do you know how to use this product?" I was like, "Yeah, as a paralegal, I know how to use this product." She's like, "Do you know how to plan an event?" I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, I plan events at restaurants." She was like, "You're a marketer now." Okay. And so some of it was, I guess, like good luck, good timing. And then I worked some early sketchy jobs, but then I've had a pretty good run at solid companies like DocuSign or Purio. We were they're not part of Wipro, but we were like the premier Salesforce integrator at the time. And then I spent about 6 years at Mongo, and I've been 2 years at Abnormal now.
Very cool. And what are you doing at Abnormal?
So I run revenue marketing, which is inclusive of the demand functions of marketing and the sales development team.
Very cool. So what can you tell me about that specific title? I know from my perspective, we're seeing the rise of the chief revenue officer, which can oversee marketing plus sales. How do you define revenue marketing?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like the tech bullshit title of the day, in my humble opinion. But the demand gen, the reason why I chose it was because when I started Abnormal, I was taking over the SDR team for the first time.
Mm.
And some, SDR teams there's always, I guess, opinions and conflicts on where the SDR team should live. And the demand gen title was the one that I was interviewing with, but I'm like, it's not encompassing enough, and I also felt that it would feel too too marketingy and too distracted from sales for an SDR organization to roll up into it. So since it has sort of become the hot thing over the past like 2 years, I was like, this does kind of make the point. And it felt like the right thing to do, and it landed actually quite well with the team. That transition was actually, I think, much easier by calling it revenue marketing. And in fact, I am in the process of evolving my field marketing organization, and I'm effectively going to start calling them revenue marketers as well,
Hmm.
and partially just to get rid of the stigma of field marketing being just some folks who do an event in a region and then they're completely disconnected from how the business works and what the impact of what they're doing is, right? So it's to both make a statement that we're making that change, but then also like that this title does have some cachet in it now that I think will actually help, the long term trajectory of these folks on my team as well.
So how has your perspective of field marketing changed over the years? I mean, it sounds like you're making some changes now. What has been the evolution of your strategic thinking of field marketing over your career?
Yeah, yeah. I've done it. Oh, I mean, effectively, I was part of an events team um, at DocuSign, and then when I moved to Aperio, I was running field marketing and demand. our motion was heavily events, big strategic events. Like because at Aperia we were aligned. We like the channel was the most important part, right? And our channel was Salesforce, right? Getting leads from Salesforce to integrate Salesforce into companies, right? So doing things like Dreamforce and making these big splashes were a great big deal, right? But it really wasn't until I got to Mongo that I started to realize that um, field marketers can have a much bigger impact on, I mean, this sounds kind of silly when I say it out loud, frankly, but field marketers have much bigger impact on the business if they understand the business and if they are ensuring that whatever activities they're doing are achieving an objective. And the objective is not just to have an event and to fill it up, right? The objective is often to salesperson X says, I have really poor champion relationships in these three accounts. The marketer can come back and say, I have a great idea of a more technically oriented event, because champions in this context, particularly at Mongo, are very technically oriented. They want to get their hands dirty. They want to play with stuff, right? They want to actively engage in something. So like you could create an activity, whether that be a webinar or an event or whatever, that is really relevant for this audience that actually captures their attention. And what field marketers can do is they're offering something to our audiences, to our customers or prospects, without at least overtly requiring something in return. We're just giving, right? Salespeople are taking. That's their job. So, but the beauty of a really well positioned field marketer or a field marketing program is that that we come with a less salesy lens, and we allow folks to engage with us in order to achieve the objectives that the sales team has, further down funnel or wherever it is. So and what I've seen over time is that. And I noticed this when I started at MongoDB that I inherited a really really strong team. Some folks still even live with me till today, and you're going to hear the dog barking as in the background if you haven't already. That you usually have two types of folks in a field marketing organization. You have really strong events folks who are really really good at planning an event, but they don't necessarily either understand or care about like the specific business or objectives that are tied to their events. They're really good at producing an event, but then you have other folks who are effectively mini salespeople. So when you can identify these two personas as separate, I think you can then build two complementary teams where you have a really strong events marketing team that produces incredibly strong, engaging events, but then a really, really well targeted field marketing team that understands the business objectives of what marketing is doing. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. For people that might be thinking of their own organization, what advice do you have for them if they want to follow this approach? I mean, what other teams do you need to get involved? What kind of buy-in? Just what advice if we're going down this road, where do we start?
Yeah, building out what I would call a real field marketing, or I
Yeah.
guess revenue marketing org. Um, the first thing I think is like the identifying the personas that you have. Even in some of the recent hiring I've done in the field marketing org, I haven't necessarily. Now, this hasn't played out in every role, to be clear, but I haven't necessarily looked for people who have traditional field marketing titles, like who have had field marketing in their job title for like 10 years. I look for people who have had demand roles, which usually implies that you're a little more dialed into how a funnel works and what sales objectives are. I've also had a lot of success historically with at Mongo. We built a really really solid ABM team, and I'm talking like high touch at 1-to-1 ABM. Where I had one marketer who was dedicated to 5 or 6 accounts. Some of the best ones on that team were actually ex-SDRs because
Hmm.
they have experience talking to customers. They understood what the sales team needed, right? Because they were the linchpin between the two of them. So that part of it is also just making sure that you get the right profile and the right historical mix, right? That the person has done. I think another element of it is making sure that you have uh, that the sales team really understands what they should expect out of the role. right? Because if anyone has had a job in tech for more than 10 years, their field marketer was most likely someone who threw really good events. And that's a really good thing, to be clear, right? But they wouldn't expect this person to understand how a deal cycle progresses, or what the different personas in an opportunity look like and why they matter, et cetera, right? So it requires both the marketing organization and leadership, but also the sales organization to understand what they expect out of this person, so that we can hold that person or team accountable to make sure that we achieve what we're trying to achieve with it. That part's honestly one of the hardest parts.
Yeah, so
It's changing the perspective.
yeah, let me ask you about that, because I know that the sales marketing bridge is kind of a challenge that a lot of marketers are facing, whether it's on your side, the partner marketing side, you name it. Is that really a top-down approach? Are there programmatic things you're doing to connect sales with the marketing side? What are you seeing work in terms of bringing those organizations together so they're rowing in the same direction?
Yeah, that the tops down or bottoms up thing is a really good way to look at it. I've never thought about that before, but like at Mongo, as an example, we prided ourselves on being, I call it PG culture, right? Like the sales team were heavily monitored, that they had enough pipeline in their names, and they were expected that it was expected that they controlled their pipeline destiny, full stop, right? So a lot of what I spent a lot of time proving that marketing was having a beneficial impact to their business, right? And then the success I ended up seeing actually was in field marketing, which is honestly when I started to uncover or really understand. So it was what field marketing could really do was taught to me by some really strong field marketers I had at the time, who were they were embedded with the field. They spent more time understanding how the field operated and supporting deal cycles than they did actually planning events. And then I was able to prove out in pieces, like in pockets, like, here's what a really strong relationship could look like, and then that sort of fed up into larger, or let's say better strategic alignments further up the chain, right? And these things always change, and as soon as you feel like you have it done, something screws up, and you have to start all over again. But that's how it was at Mongo. At Abnormal, where I am now. The, the my current boss and the sales organization, generally speaking, I roll up into the president of go-to-market. So he oversees, my peers are the CRO, the head of product marketing, of course, my role, customer success, etc. Um, at Abnormal, they expect marketing to deliver a certain amount of pipeline, actually a significant amount of pipeline, like much more than you would expect in a company of our size. So you almost have it's the inverse opportunity and problem, right? Is that you're expected to deliver this thing, which is great, but then how can the marketing support in different parts of the buyer journey? That's been the big thing I've had to unpack, and get alignment on. And I can't say I have full alignment, to be clear, but it is okay. Sure, marketing can deliver you, that last meeting, that last touch meeting that turns into an opportunity. But how can marketing help drive awareness that would allow you to PG easier, right? Everyone, and then on the other end of the funnel, everyone, philosophically understands that marketing has a big impact in progression, but we're still trying to prove 10 years later how you can actually measure that in aggregate. You understand it at the deal level, right? Like any rep will be like, oh my God, thank God this event happened, because I never would have met this CISO, right? But when you start aggregating, it becomes infinitely more complicated. So my current, I think project or sales alignment is making sure that we're all aligned on where we want marketing to play into parts of the funnel, because we only have finite resources. So it's very my past two roles have been completely different in how I've had to ensure that we have sales and marketing alignment in varying degrees, which of course has always been varying degrees.
Yeah, well, I mean, from my perspective, that's how we grow, right? We gotta change and have new challenges. Let me ask you a little bit about partner marketing. So I know, yeah, last time we talked, you mentioned your perception on channel marketing through the channel, selling through the channel has kind of changed. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about, how does your organization approach, channel partner marketing, and how have your thoughts changed over the years?
Yeah, and to be clear, I can only speak to a certain level of depth because I'm honestly still learning this. Because I never when I came to Abnormal, the CRO Kevin was phenomenal. He sat me down and he was and I was like, this I don't understand this channel stuff. This is going to be my hump. You have to teach me this stuff. And he was like, we're a channel first organization. I'm like, what does that mean? And he's like, well, every deal we do, more or less, gets processed through the channel. So I'm like, well, so we're just giving margin away, like even if we find the opportunity, So that, like at first blush, you're kind of like, this seems kind of silly. Why are we giving money away? Um, and then it, over the months, a couple of years that I've been there, you start to realize, particularly in cyber, and maybe I'm wrong about the particularly in cyber part, but it feels particularly in cyber because it's so relationship based, so much more than other technologies I've sold. Like the element of trust by definition to this audience, which is very wary on purpose. Like the relationship is really important. So we have I had a really great, we have a really great field CISO, Patty, who just joined us about 2 quarters ago, and I had her come to a marketing offsite to talk to the team, and we were asking her about like what are her feelings about the channel, and she said, I forget her guy's name, but she was like, I don't make any decision unless I talk to what's his name at GuidePoint. And Patty has been a multi-time CISO, right? And very tech forward, right? Like she's been cutting edge a lot of stuff, but making that statement, it reinforced like now I gotta get it. And of course, like as you would expect, when you get an opportunity from the channel, it tends to be infinitely more qualified. So like when we were mapping out our buyer journey when I started, like we effectively dropped in a channel op would effectively dropped in at qualified pipeline in my mind, right? Like you didn't have to do any of the vetting stages because the channel rep knows the account well, probably, right? Like knows the person he or she are talking to quite well, understands that like they are in the market to buy something, so they're effectively qualified by the time that they arrive, which means that they progress through the funnel like about 2x as fast, and about twice the size, right, or something like this is what we were seeing. Um, so then once you learn all those things, then you're like, okay, now I understand the benefit of us being able to do two really important things that again, still getting my arms around is one, just making sure that we're spending enough effort and money to get the mind share of the channel, generally speaking, right? Because I think they're called rate cards. They're like the different all the different vendors that they could sell is in the hundreds. So it's like, well, how do you get that? How do you get their mind share? That's never going to come out in Elastic attribution model, right? That was
I was just
impactful.
going to
So that
ask. That's probably a hard thing to measure, right?
it's a terribly hard
Yeah.
thing to measure. The thing I've asked recently for us to start thinking about is, can we at least met like side by side be like, okay, we invested $100,000 into GuidePoint. Did we see deal regs increase in a month or 2 months, whatever the time period is? Do we see this happen? You know, um, and we do. So there's an element of it of that, so that you just have to believe that this level of investment is important. And then the other thing that I found really interesting, that some of the folks who I respect a lot at Abnormal, who have done this for a long time, is like they strategically give deals to the channel, right? So that it's a give to get thing, right? So like that whole thing is something that I'm learning that's been super interesting, on the strategy that must be applied to make sure that you get what you need out of the channel, and how that is also different, so different channel partner by channel partner, segment by segment. Like the complexity. I like complex things. So like the complexity is actually a really fascinating thing to figure out. And recently I hired a fantastic leader to lead the West, and one of her big selling points was that she really understands the cyber channel ecosystem,
Yeah.
particularly of the regions and how those change even down region to region, like city to city, which has been a complicated thing for us to get our arms around. But I feel like we're finally starting to figure that out and see the impact from it. from a
So let me
marketing
ask,
perspective, at least.
yeah, no, that makes sense. So let me ask you, when you're investing into the channel to try to increase deal reg overall, without giving away any proprietary tactics or strategies, but just best practices, like what kind of programs are you seeing work out there? What doesn't?
Yeah. So my team and EMEA is uniquely clever. To just I'll give a program example. They're well, I guess how do you say this? Making assumptions that many of the sales rep type personas are into fitness. Yeah, so they did this big program called Fit for Success, where they do like these little fitness challenges and give away cute little swag. They have people come to the office. They do a little bit of an enablement session, and then they may or may not end with like a call out afternoon. Like it's a like a half day program that they get really great engagement from. It's different. Like the most important thing that you can do, to my point, is that you have to differentiate yourselves from the competition, that like all of the other vendors that could possibly be talking to them, which is in email security, which is our bread and butter currently, right? But we're evolving past this. But in email security specifically, but also just the time suck of anything else they could be selling, right? So the differentiation is important. Another thing that we've seen with I call this like fits and starts is being able to like automate content consumption, right? So like this is how this is explained to me. Like imagine how you're enabling a sales organization, but internally, but they only have to understand our stuff. You now have to go enable these partner sellers who then have all these things to understand. So you need to make the consumption of content and our messaging and our differentiators really easy for them to understand and remember, so that they can actually differentiate us when they're in these conversations with CISO X. So this hasn't launched yet, but we're in the process of building this like it's a GPT for the channel, so that they can effectively ask and query um, uh, all the information that we make public to them, so that they can help with messaging, et cetera. And they're even going to be able to deploy campaigns on our behalf,
Hmm.
which of course benefits them, because if they get the lead, they get a higher margin, et cetera, et cetera. So the self-serve uh, scalability piece, I think, is a really important one. But you need to balance both like that hand to hand, shaking hands and kissing baby stuff, with the ability for these folks to self serve in equal bits, I think, because you still have to differentiate ourselves. But at the same time, um, we're never going to hire a 40-person channel marketing team, at the size of company that we are, which you would that technically need if we were going to enable them to the quality that we do with an internal team.
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting because when you approach differentiation, it's not just in the messaging; it's part of the experience. You're getting really creative in the events that you're bringing to market as the program. So I think that's a really good takeaway for people out there. It's not just as simple as putting it on the content, but let's shake hands at these unique different experiences, and then
Yes.
back that up with the enablement piece that you're doing. I love the
And our
GPT
name's
stuff.
Abnormal, by the way. So like
You're really
like
leaning into
if
it.
we don't lean into that to differentiate ourselves, I honestly don't think we do well enough at all yet. That we've been talking about this at marketing leadership levels, that like we got to lean into the abnormal stuff. It's too good,
Yeah,
like that, and we own our name. No one else does,
yeah,
so we can do
that's
whatever we
good.
want with our name,
That's
right?
cool. I
So
love it. I love it. I want to ask a little bit about team building because I know a lot of teams out there they're looking for talent. There's a lot of great people out there looking for jobs. How do they stand out? What's been your approach to building teams? And then when you get a really good, let's say, integrated marketer on the team, like what impact does that have to the organization?
yeah, I historically I've been trying to map this question out in my mind. So like that. I like to have fun at work, and I like to be around fun people. And I don't think you can like work at the level of intensity that we're expected to, and not have a good time. That gets termed as culture, and then culture gets termed as something that you can sort of fall back on when you're like, I don't know if I like that person enough. And then what ends up happening is that you end up building a team that isn't diverse enough. and and they don't really make up, particularly in marketing and in revenue marketing in general. Well, I need a lot of different ways of thinking in order to be effective, and I feel that I have built. So my earlier point is I've been guilty of that in the past, of hiring people that I might want to go have a glass of wine with, and not necessarily the person who actually is going to force us to make change and
Mhm.
be better at what we are doing. I believe, ask my team, but I believe uh, I've done and we've done a really strong job at Abnormal. I have a very, very diverse team of folks who come with very different perspectives, very different skill sets. Like my digital guy who I just hired, Abdullah. I'm not going to give a last name, but no one could go hire him. But he is phenomenal. He is an AI genius. He can code himself. I don't need someone who can. I don't need someone who can write beautiful decks for the context of digital. I want someone who can do the work. Adela can do both, thank God. That that was sort of a mental shift I had to make. That it was uh, um, uh, you want a really strong operator in some roles. In other roles, you want someone who will sit at the 30,000 foot view level and put pretty decks together. I've recently hired a really strong integrated marketer. And this is a role that I've tried to fill multiple times. I never did it well, and she's come in and been a incredibly strong organizing force at Abnormal. It's been profound, the amount of impact that she's been able to make and the ability to integrate the different parts of marketing in ways that everyone feels seen and heard, and that you can actually integrate um, the work that we do. Like she presented to the entire marketing team about this, big rollout. It's like 9 months in, the big rollout of the integrated marketing framework. That she and a consultant that I used for a while, Stephanie, who introduced me to you, that they built this. They built a fantastic framework, and of course, and then they launched it to the marketing team. Now, when you tell a marketing team like, "Hey, we're going to ensure that we integrate all parts of marketing into it, so that we're all parts of a campaign. So we're saying the same message across multiple channels at the right side of the buyer journey." Like, who's going to say, "No, it's dumb. I don't want to do that." But obviously, what happens is when you start doing the work, the friction starts. It's like, oh, a second, I own this part of the funnel, or I own that message, or no, I'm supposed to own this piece of content, or whatever, right? Um, and she's been, I think, very good at definitely ensuring that there's the right level of input and the right level of voice of each of the constituents in this process. We're not done yet, by the way. Like, I don't think we'll ever be done, but we're on the precipice of a better level of interlock that I've ever seen in my entire career, which is really exciting.
Sounds
I
like we're going
can't
back to
say
your
enough how important it is to have that role.
no, and it sounds like we're going back to your diplomacy days of working, making sure we're not stepping on toes and getting
Shit,
people involved and
you have to be the
feeling part of the
ultimate diplomat.
process.
Like, that's the
Yeah.
that's the most important part of the role. It's very true. It's
Right. I
very
want
true.
to, as we kind of close out here, I want to talk a little bit about AI and innovation in terms of, how you're utilizing AI. What are you experimenting with? Anything you're comfortable with sharing with the audience in terms of what you're seeing?
Yeah. I mean, that one of the neat things about Abnormal, and I didn't, we're living it, so we don't like uh, it. The perspectives I get actually are through interviewing candidates, and I joined Abnormal, so it's 2 years ago. I left Mongo, and when Mongo was, so this is 2.5 years ago, I left Mongo, let's say, and they, it was when when the AI boom was really happening, right? And Mongo is actually very well positioned for AI because of the way that it stores data, right? Um, but we didn't have a strong message for it at the time, right? So to a certain extent, like the message had to be retrofitted. I feel like they've actually done a really good job of it. And it's not AI washing; it's genuine. I come to Abnormal. Abnormal's been AI since the beginning. It's by definition AI, right? Machine learning before that, whatever, right? At Abnormal, when they started, the stories I've been told have been like they'd walk into that the founders would walk into a CISO and they'd be like, this magical AI is going to help you identify a phishing email. And they're like, okay, so they actually pulled back from that messaging at the beginning. And then when this boom happened, 3 years ago, whatever it was, became infinitely, abnormal became infinitely more relevant. It also just happens to be hands down the best tool you could possibly have to identify fraud in email, like as it happens to be, right? But because we're an AI native company, our CEO had a big push like about a year ago where he was like, everyone must start thinking about things from an AI native perspective. Leadership on down, right? Fits and starts naturally, right? But we effectively got like a blank check isn't the right word, but we were incentivized to be like, go, do it. You know, we're not going to put a bunch of restrictions on you. We've since had to be like, okay, we don't need this many agents. Like let's be a little more specific about how we're going to utilize and how we're going to utilize AI. But when I'm talking to candidates, they're really impressed by how liberal we are with AI usage internally, because a lot of other companies have gone the other direction because they're freaked out about it and they want to put a bunch of rules around it, and
Especially
people can't
security
experiment
companies
around it,
too, right?
especially security companies.
Yeah.
So some of the folks, I won't name names, but some of the folks that we've recently hired on my team and others were like, I can't believe how AI forward you are, which was reassuring for us to an extent, because I mean, to me at least, I don't know, I can't speak for everyone who's been there for 2 years or more, but like because the change is happening so quickly, it feels like you're never doing enough or you're never keeping up fast enough. But then when you see other companies who are dealing with it, you're like, oh wait, we're actually doing pretty good. Like we're doing, I'd say we still have a long way to go though, to be clear. So, I mean, some of the ways that we're utilizing AI internally. I mentioned the concept of the like the partner GPT that we're building, right? We have completely reorganized, and this is something that we're starting to market a lot more. We've completely reorganized our engineering department to be much more AI first. Which if you think about it, the old way that an engineering department was built, it is you have to retrofit it to in the age of AI. So we spend a lot of time doing that, and we can now build software at phenomenal speeds. And marketing, obviously, like the biggest opportunity tends to be in digital, and the digital team that I have has been doing some really really cool shit. I'll give some examples. Like they built a workflow where effectively you can like take a white paper or a threat report, you can dump it in the front of this, and it'll generate a webinar. So effectively, like it'll identify who the speaker should be. It'll write the brief. It'll write the questions that you should have. It will then schedule out the dates that you need to prepare for the webinar, etc. So, like like webinars, one of the first things I did as a marketer, right? That's a week's worth of work. That you spend 3 or 4 hours a day. You have to call the people, hey, can you do this? Blah blah blah. It's been boiled down to like, I don't know exactly, but like let's say an hour's worth of work. Sure, it has to be vetted. Nothing coming out of this is perfect. Um, that's one example. Another example that's really cool is that we've hired this agency that is SEO agency that effectively writes a shit ton of content that we effectively ghost linked, right? So we don't put everything like directly on the blog or even navigable on the website, but then it allows obviously the machines to crawl all the content that we've created, and then depending on how effective it is, we'll make it navigable or make the content better and better over time. Now, I mean, I think anyone who's ever dealt with this knows that you see the benefits of SEO like what, 3 quarters, 4 quarters after you start, right? We started seeing an uptick in traffic, significant quality uptick in traffic within a quarter.
Hmm.
Like the speed at which we started seeing results was astounding. And then because of that, this is a piece of this, but because of that, our organic traffic and our organic traffic and our demo request numbers just went through the roof. So like the speed at which you can see results through doing old-fashioned ways of marketing through AI are really profound, right? So that's just a couple of the things that I've been really fascinated by what the team has been able to do. They're probably, if they would watch this, they're probably like, he doesn't even understand all of the cool shit we're doing. But the fact that we're allowed to, and not only allowed to, but are expected to, has allowed the team to do some really, really fun stuff.
Now, one last question in terms of just sharing with the audience. You're doing a lot of cool stuff. You've gotten pretty far in your career. What's the one piece of advice you'd have for someone, maybe around a skill set, if you had to focus on one particular skill that's helped you get to where you are and what you're achieving today? Like, what advice would you have around that skill?
Okay, this kind of sounds like a throwaway, but um, and it's not really a skill, but I call it curiosity, and and I'd say analytical curiosity. That we're really good at this at Abnormal, maybe too good, where you can't take what you're given at face value. Like you actually have to be like, that doesn't make sense. Like explain this to me. Cut this data like this. I want to understand when I do this and this and this. Are we actually doing well or not? Like that. I think to get to any level of leadership, you have to be relatively comfortable with data and data analysis, and you have to be genuinely curious to understand answers to questions. That's probably been the most impactful thing for me, and also because I come from that marketing, right, where that historically wasn't the most important skill set that I needed, but building that over time has served me greatly, I think.
Yeah, and I think these days too, especially with things changing so quickly, we can't just accept this is the way we've always done things, right? So just even
A
being
hundred
curious,
percent.
even being curious about existing things, like why are we doing it this way? So
Like,
I love it.
is this worthwhile?
Yeah,
Is this actually achieving anything?
yeah.
You need to constantly question this, and then also be able to have the information and be quick enough to consume it so that you can make quick decisions. I don't think we're remotely where we need to be from that. I mean, I think as an industry, but also even at normal, like the speed at which we can consume information and make decisions and change. I think we need to be 3x faster, 4x faster than we are today. I think that will always be the case. But I feel like that the urgency to do it is much greater than it used to be because of how quickly things are changing.
Yeah, well, no doubt your team's kind of on that track to get there before I think some others. So thank you for coming on the show and sharing
You
that. I
bet.
learned a lot, and I'm sure everyone else did. So
Yeah.
thanks a
Nice
lot,
chatting with you,
Ryan.
Rick.
Yeah, I really appreciate it.
You bet.